Welcome to Disrupt Health Tech, the podcast where we dive deep into the innovations transforming healthcare. I'm your host, Wendy Austin, and today's segment is a part of a 6-part series titled Building Health Tech from Concept to Care. Within 6 episodes, we'll peel back the layers of what it truly takes to bring groundbreaking health technology to life, from the initial spark of the idea through vigorous clinical validation, smart product management, strategic sales, effective marketing, and powerful analytics. We'll cover the entire life cycle. So whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, a healthcare professional, or simply curious about the future of medicine, this is your essential guide to understanding how health tech moves from visionary concept all the way to delivering real-world care. Let's get started. For tuning in to another episode of Disrupt Health Tech. I am your host, Wendy Austin, and today we're talking about vetting your healthcare startup product and or service as a clinical need before spending a lot of sales and marketing dollars. My guest today is Natalie Freels, who is an internist PA and a practitioner at Mayo Clinic, as well as a CEO of her own consulting agency, Insight Health Consulting. At her agency, she talks with startups about what makes a viable product for clinicians. Welcome, Natalie, to Disrupt Health Tech. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you guys for listening. Yes, you covered about most of it. As an internist PA, I work in hospital internal medicine. I have an incredible team, and I'm so honored to be able to take care of patients day in and day out, be able to be with their families. And outside of that, I do research as well as precepting new students and trainees. My research background has mainly been in the integration of technology, wearable technology, into the inpatient setting, as well as optimization of the electronic health record. And then outside of all those things, I do my consulting, which I absolutely love. I like to say that consulting saved me from burnout, and being able to use my clinical background, as well as everything I've learned along the way to work with new startups in the health tech space, in the med tech space, to be able to help them position their innovation as really solving an important clinical gap. So being able to work with them to help them see and help them tell the story of how their health tech can help clinicians and help patients has been incredibly fulfilling.
Very good. So as a clinician yourself, do you think a lot of health tech or digital health products make your life easier or harder? And in general terms, what should the goal for a health tech product be from a clinician's point of view?
Yeah, great question, Wendy. I think that it really comes down to what is the role that that technology is serving. There is so much noise in the space right now, right? Everyone wants to talk about AI. Everyone wants to call things AI that are really not AI. I know that you and I have talked about that before too.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think really what it comes down to is health tech and AI integration essential to the advancement of how we do healthcare delivery in the US? Absolutely. In the next 5 years, I think that American healthcare will look vastly different. However, I think that there is a lot of health tech and a lot of health AI initiatives out there that it's more like I have a product and now I'm trying to find a need, as opposed to I have a clinical need and then I built this product to help with that. You know, and I think another big portion is that, are these companies going to the clinicians that are actually with the patients every day and saying, where are your pain points? As opposed to just saying, you know, I looked on Google or I asked ChatGPT, where do clinicians, you know, waste time or have issues? Or even, you know, this might be a little controversial, but even asking just the administrators, you know, I think it's important to get stakeholder data and get stakeholder engagement, and don't forget the people who are actually going to be using your tech, which is clinicians and possibly patients. That's really essential. So I hope that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. Does health tech make American healthcare better? Yes, it can. I think another, thing I would add is, are we just trying to put a Band-Aid on undue administrative burden, as opposed to like radically rethinking the way that we deliver healthcare? Should we just rethink the whole way that we do that process? And I think that takes innovators having really honest conversations about the people that they're hoping to serve.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's talk about your process and how you determine if there's a market fit or a clinical need for these products.
Yeah, great question. So I think that for any product that I work on or any project that I work on, I start with the most basic question, right? Exactly what we said. What is the core clinical need that this product, this innovation, this change, this fill in the blank is trying to solve? And first, I have the innovator answer that for me. And if it takes more than 45 seconds, we're done. Like we have to work on that, okay? And this should be incredibly clear. It should be very simple. What is the clinical need and how are we solving it? And when it comes to myself evaluating, if I think that there's a clinical need there, I have a very humble approach. I'm only one person. I only work at one institution. I only do internal medicine in the hospital. I only have so much knowledge and so much experience. So that's where I really rely on other experts in the field that I've come to know and make connections with to say, hey, what do you think about this? What has your experience been here? Companies that really impress me are ones that have gone out and spoken with clinicians, their target clinicians, over and over again throughout the process. This is not just on the idea phase. This is throughout the idea phase. This is throughout R&D. This is actually into regulatory. This is actually during launch. Like, we should be sampling these people that are our goal market over and over and over. This does not count your college buddies. Like, when I have founders that talk to me and they say, oh, well, I got this friend, he or she says we should, it really is about being honest that it's going to take, if you want your product to succeed, we have to get the opinion of a pretty broad market. And it's also, it's not everybody, it can't just be the podium speakers, right? I think maybe back in the 90s, this key opinion leader concept was, surgeons who were speaking on podiums and really, on important board positions. But I really succeed today, you need the opinion of, even those physicians and those nurses, those care team members are in rural hospitals, that are in underserved areas, that are in your urban academic medical centers. It can't just be the opinion of people on the podium. If you want your product to have good market penetration, we need to see what's going to work for your target market in a wide breadth or wide variety.
All right, very good. So we've talked before about the ethical question behind both med tech and health tech products being necessary, medically necessary. Sometimes there's a fine line, though, between medically needed and needed to help perform your work faster and or easier. Is there a case for both of these, or should the product always be evaluated on its medical need only?
It's a great question. I think that innovation and what we're talking about here with med tech, health tech, it goes back to what's the value, right? And if the value allows a clinician to make a better relationship with their patient, reduce burnout, spend more time focusing on diagnosis and treatment, and humanizing American healthcare, then that absolutely has so much value. That has tremendous value. I think that there is space for both, and we need both. need med tech that's going to change how we diagnose and how we treat, medical illness in this country. And we also need these kinds of innovation that is focused on healthcare delivery and is focused on making experience for the clinician something that is safer and reducing burnout. So absolutely, there's room for both, and we should focus on both.
Yeah. So a lot of startups in the health tech and med tech space skip the step of ensuring their product is necessary in a clinician's setting, especially if they don't need FDA approvals. What do you say to those companies who are already starting their marketing before consulting with a clinician as yourself or others to understand what the product's impact would be?
Wow, that's a tricky one, Wendy. There will always be innovators, there will always be inventors, there will always be people in the business world that believe that their product can get to market no matter what. And I think to some extent they may be right. Build something that patients may be interested in, you may be successful. I think that may be more of an ethical question though, because then what does that patient, that information, what does their PCP or their primary care provider do with that information? So I think that if the product that they're trying to build is direct to consumer, I still highly recommend involving clinicians, because you need to think, I would like companies to think through the whole spectrum. Like, what's the whole timeline? I build this product, I sell this product, my patient or my customer uses the product, and then what? What happens after that? So what if it's a product that they use or that they get information from, what do they do with that information, right? Or who is looking at that information? I think that is kind of the space that people forget or, don't want to think about, or just assume that clinicians will be excited about, or they assume that we know what to do with that information, whatever it is. Yeah. And I think my recommendation would be, look at the pathway of what is the intended use of the product. Where does the medical system as we know it fit in there, or where do you envision it fitting in? And then bring in clinicians for feedback, at that point. What would you do if a patient came to you with this? And how does this fit back into the care delivery that you're already engaging in? Some will listen, some will not. And I think that it's always interesting to hear what people's thoughts are on how that interaction goes. Is that so? That I think brings us full circle back to my first or second point about are we starting with a tech and finding a need, or are we starting with a need and then finding a tech to solve it?
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Speaking of consumers and patients, so a lot of consumers are choosing to sign up directly with apps, concierge services, and other digital health platforms. Do you approach verifying the clinical need for these startups differently than a solution that's actually meant to be built for the clinician?
Great question. I think it really follows the same process. So the assessing for the clinical need in these apps that you're talking about, a lot of it, I think, or at least the most successful ones, are ones that fill a really clear care gap, or a really clear gap in care. So if we can identify the exact, need that app is trying to help with, then I think that is your clinical need right there, right?
Yeah.
If that can be identified, that's really effective. There's a lot of apps on the market, a lot of companies like this on the market that are doing various things. And again, I think it comes back to what is the overall integration in that patient's healthcare journey. I think my only hesitation with those kinds of groups is that, are they getting fragmented care? Is their care kind of transitioned away from this whole person to kind of fragmented based on what they're looking for? And I think that can be a hard balance, right? We know that there's a primary care physician and primary care provider shortage in the US.
Right.
Patients have needs, right? They're going out and seeking these point of care services to be able to address various concerns that they have. So I do think that I would call it like specialized telemedicine or specialized health tech, has tremendous value for those who, cannot get to a specialist, or it's not offered in their area, or, life is just busy. And so this kind of telehealth platform is just easier for continuity of care. My only concern, as an internist, is there's not a point guard, right? And so if patients are just utilizing these fragmented models without a primary care provider in the mix to oversee the entire orchestra of it, I think that's when we can get into an uncomfortable situation. And I do have, concerns about patient outcomes and patient well-being.
Yeah. So in that case, when you are looking at a startup and they're using your consulting services, do you look for that, holistic point of view from if they're doing a point of care type of app or service?
Yeah, great question. I think what I look for and what always impresses me the most is the founders that have an understanding for how it's delivered, how healthcare is delivered currently.
Yeah.
Have in their minds, okay, how primary care going to interact with this? Do they need to be looped in? How is my patient going to take the care that they get on this platform and go forward? And then honestly have that humility to know that, such fragmented care can be detrimental, is detrimental.
Yeah.
So I think I think it's less about the exact specialty or the services they offer, and it's more about somebody in the company understanding that we want to make sure that we are increasing access and increasing whole person care, and that one app is not one app doing one problem or solving one clinical need or one clinical condition is not going to do that. Does that make sense? So I think for me, when I choose the companies I work with, I think I always look for humility and someone who really understands that it's so important to make sure that even though the app is addressing this one clinical problem, we're not pushing the patient away from whole person care.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Do you also advise on or consult on how startups can approach investors with their products, and in particular, investors who may be doctors themselves or healthcare organizations? And what would this look like for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes back to what we want to be. What's your clinical need? Can you boil down what you're trying to accomplish in very simple terms that take less than 5 seconds? I have this product, it solves this clinical need, and I approach it by doing this thing. Currently on the market, I have A, B, and C, and they don't make the mark for reasons X, Y, Z, right? My product will do that because this is the differentiating factor. Absolutely. And I think, again, it starts with having a very, very clear value message. Something about value, though, is value is more than ROI. Just like what we talked about is it okay that there's, med tech and health tech innovation that's more clinician focused as opposed to patient focused? Absolutely, because value is more than ROI. And I think that you can define value in so many different ways. So absolutely, when startups that I've worked with, when we talk about how to approach investors or research partners or clinicians, future buyers, it's all about, can we summarize all the hard work that you've done into a really clear and concise value statement, value message that resonates?
Yeah, very good. So you've started a consulting agency, Insight Health. Could you tell us what types of services you provide and how startups would start to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Insight Health Consulting, I have been working with startups to do exactly what we've talked about. Talk with them about what's their current idea of market fit, do value to market fit exploration, help them talk with opinion leaders across the country to validate their current ideas, current plan, And then I also do some healthcare delivery education. I find that a lot of founders do not have a health tech background or a healthcare background. And so there are absolutely some gaps in knowledge. And that's actually a lot of what I do is a lot of healthcare education, healthcare delivery education, connecting them if needed to other experts in the field as far as regulatory, quality, go-to-market strategy, and then, helping them to be able to take all the good work they've done and combine that into a really, really clear message that they can take and use to inform every step, right? Every step of development. Your value statement, your value proposition informs your R&D. It informs your regulatory plan. It informs your marketing. So I really see myself as kind of that first person saying messaging, or how do we optimize marketing? But we start with value, right? They can take that value and go be able to achieve all these other important milestones for a go-to-market strategy.
All right, very good. So thank you so much for your time today, Natalie. I really enjoyed our discussion on ensuring health tech products are medically necessary and adding value. For more information about either Disrupt Health Tech or Insight Health Consulting, please see the links below. Thank you so much for attending today, and see you next episode. Remember, this is just one episode of a 6-part series, and each one will bring you closer to understanding the full picture of health tech innovation. You won't want to miss all 6. Please be sure to subscribe to Disrupt Health Tech so you don't miss a single episode of the series Building Health Tech from Concept to Care. Thank you so much for listening, and join us next time for more insights into the future of healthcare technology.